As the world has watched with worry over the Russian invasion of Ukraine, many foreign policy experts also see parallels to a potential reignition of a dormant 73-year-old civil war between Communist China and Taiwan. President Biden's recent comments on American military defense of Taiwan is a departure from longstanding U.S. foreign policy that is what is becoming somewhat of a pattern. The White House then has to quickly walk back what the president says. But what should the American response be to any potential Chinese military action against Taiwan? Joining me now to break down the implications of the president's comments and more is House Armed Services Committee member Congressman Mike Waltz. He represents Florida's 6th Congressional District. And like me, Congressman Waltz just recently was sanctioned by Russia. So, Congressman Waltz, welcome back to the program.
Hey, good to be with you, Tony, and I'll take that sanction as a badge of honor.
Yeah, so I guess, China doesn't like us, Russia doesn't like us. I guess we're doing something right.
Yeah, add that to Iran, Cuba, and Venezuela, and that's just fine by me.
Yeah, and I would say, for my sake, the Southern Poverty Law Center, there's a common thread among all of them. They're all communist. But let's go to President Biden's answer this morning when he was asked about whether or not the United States would defend Taiwan if China invades. What do you make of his comments?
Well, I actually, Tony, agreed with his comments because I think we need some strategic clarity in terms of deterrence. As the Chinese Communist Party are developing their plans, their stated plans for the reunification of China, either peacefully or militarily, I think our goal needs to be to prevent that from happening. And when we look at deterrence as it pertained to Ukraine and Russia, deterrence clearly failed. Putin was not deterred, and now we have 6 million refugees, entire cities being leveled, a regional, if not soon to be global food crisis, and the devastation that we're seeing in Ukraine. Yes, we've had a tough and unified response, but my point is when it comes to Taiwan, having a tough and unified response after the fact, after Taipei is leveled or after China seizes Taiwan by force, it will be devastating. And why should the American people care? I think it's important to understand that if China takes Taiwan, they will control trade routes and shipping into Japan, South Korea, Australia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam. I can go down the list. They will essentially control 50% of global GDP and trade. And that will be a huge step in their march to be the global dominant power. So today's remarks from Biden saying, our military will intervene. We will not allow this. I actually welcomed. But then his White House goes and cleans it up and changes it and muddies the water. And this kind of mixed messaging coming from this White House is incredibly dangerous.
I would agree with you in that I believe the president's first statement was the correct statement. I think putting everything on the table, say, yes, we'll consider all options. I think had we done that in Ukraine, we may have had a different outcome, although not advocating for that. I don't think we should take anything off the table in terms of our response to aggressive actions against our allies. And so the troubling aspect, and you can even see this in this press conference, where there was kind of an audible stir in the room with reporters quickly recognizing that he had stepped further away from this strategic ambiguity that the U.S. has pursued with our Taiwan policy. But what message does this send internationally as soon as the president makes a statement that you have his White House staff going back trying to change it and clean it up?
Well, once again, it leads to the question of who's really in charge and who is writing the talking points and who's writing the teleprompter that apparently the president's not allowed to deviate from. And that kind of question, when it comes to the global superpower, when it comes to the nuclear power, is not a good thing. And I think you're seeing so many dictatorships and authoritarians on the march right now because they believe they can get away with it. And just quickly, Tony, on the policy, I believe the policy was largely correct of strategic ambiguity some decades ago. And essentially that meant that we didn't want to outright say we would militarily defend Taiwan out of fear that Taiwan would then go for independence and then therefore lead to military intervention by China. But at this point, it's an outdated policy. President Xi of China is telling his country to prepare for war, is telling his military to get ready, is stating that they're going to take Taiwan either politically or militarily. So I think it's time for deterrence, not ambiguity. And with deterrence comes clarity of what actually we will do and what red lines they cannot cross. And we're not getting that clarity from this White House. They're all over the place.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is an outdated policy, and given what has unfolded with Russia, I think it's a mixed bag in terms of how China is looking at this situation, because clearly Russia has paid an economic price for their invasion of Ukraine, and there has been greater unity in terms of Western countries and Europe sticking together on their economic policy. There's a few outliers, but for the most part, they're sticking together. And I have to think China is taking note of that.
I agree, Tony, but from the reporting that I'm seeing and my own experience, it appears that President Xi is not changing his plans. He's not been deterred by what's happening in Ukraine. He's just adjusting his plans and will accelerate the economic pieces. That's to make their economy more independent on all kinds of things, from rare earths to pharmaceuticals to oil and gas. And also to make our economy, the U.S. economy, more dependent on them, and therefore to make their economy more sanction-proof. And so I think he's adjusting his plans. And I think one other thing's just important to remind folks, the difference with Taiwan and Ukraine is we are bound by the Taiwan Relations Act. We are bound by law, which states that we will support Taiwan militarily. Now, that's a little bit vague. Or does that mean just sell them weapons or actually intervene with our military? But we are not bound by any type of law when it comes to Ukraine. And that's why you've seen this option of provide them arms and ammo, but not American troops.
Right. Thanks for making that very clear. I want to switch gears for just a moment to go to, let me before I leave that.
Sure.
The economic component of this is that we really need to divest ourselves of being dependent upon China for products, that we're manufacturing there. We need to bring a lot of that back to this hemisphere so we're not dependent upon them, because they have us over a barrel.
No, you're absolutely right. And we're actually playing into it as the left tries to drive us to a completely green economy, which means we'll be completely dependent on batteries for all types of storage. The components that make those batteries, lithium, cobalt, manganese, and others, are dominated by China. They are launching more into space than us and the rest of the world combined. So they're creating dependencies there. They control and make 90% of our antibiotics and our cancer meds. And I can go down the list. We've got to bring those supply chains back home. And if they don't come to America, then they need to come to an allied country or one in this hemisphere. I want our supply chains going north-south, not east-west. And that is not just a jobs issue. It's a national security issue at this point, because it is clear state policy of the Chinese Communist Party to create dependencies that they can then choke off if we don't agree with them geopolitically.
I do hope that's at the top of the list when the Republicans take control of Congress to address. And we're not going to get to the southern border today to discuss that, but it's related to what's happening in Central and South America as well. Congressman Mike Waltz, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for taking time out to join us today.
Okay, thank you, Tony.